Welcome to Jeremy Pryor's podcast, or what I like to call Jeremy Pryor Unfiltered. I'm his daughter and producer, Kelsey Gall, and we are excited to bring you seasons of content all the way from Tolkien to theology, from business to family. If you like to contemplate deep philosophical ideas across a wide range of topics, you've come to the right place. Make sure you give us a follow so you don't miss out on future episodes.
All right, guys, I'm here with my friend Mark Parrett. Mark, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Yeah. So Mark and I are going to chat about, and this is going to be just kind of a fun little quick conversation about a topic that I love to just kind of hear what Mark and Stephen are doing at Abraham's Wallet in terms of, how to use social media in a way that really maximizes its usefulness. And I feel like this is such a moving target. And you guys are hearing me. I had another podcast around social media. My podcast is just like whatever I'm thinking about. And I'm trying to figure this out. And so I have kind of a, you guys know my process. I kind of, burrow in through writing something. And then I invite somebody on to like help me fill it out, like correct where it might be off, and give me some insights around this. So yeah, Mark, thanks for being on here. And yeah, I'm just going to read the essay and then get your take on this.
Let's do it.
Sweet. So this is called Building a Social Media Friendship Funnel. 4 steps for turning social media strangers into lifelong friends. And by the way, as I've thought more about this, and Mark and I were just discussing this, I think the word friends is kind of, a stand-in for lots of different kinds of relationships that this same funnel could work for. Mentors we were talking about, or, your tribe, hobbies, whatever. But I'm going to use the word friends for all of that. So in Stephen Covey's famed book, 7 Habits, he describes the root of proactivity as coming from habit number 2, begin with the end in mind. This is defined as, quote, beginning each task or project with a clear vision of your desired direction and destination. If you want a particular end, aim at it. Don't be aimless. But there's no more place for aimless action these days than social media. We're all painfully aware of this fact. So the question we really need to ask is there an aim that could possibly make social media worth engaging in? I've grown skeptical that the obvious reasons for engaging in social media, things like staying connected, distant acquaintances, staying informed, a means of self-expression, et cetera, are worth the risk of addiction or the damage being done by these platforms. So I'm struggling with, is it really worth that? But I'd like to throw out what for me has become social media's greatest aim: to find and establish friendships. Can you really do this through social media? I've now had this surprising experience multiple times. Someone will follow me on social media, and a month later, I'm sitting around a fire with that person, sipping bourbon, smoking a cigar, sharing deep thoughts and life experiences. How does this happen? And can anyone do it? Well, I think the answer is yes. It does, however, take a fair amount of intention, but it is within the reach. In the process of redeeming all this distraction in the black hole of social media, and what that used to represent in my life. So how is this done? Well, begin with the end in mind. Be as specific as possible. So here's an example. I want to sit in the mountains with a growing brotherhood of business-owning Christ followers, Christ-following fathers every year. These are the folks I'm most likely to build lasting friendships with. So that's like a particular aim that you could look at. That's something I care about or I enjoy doing personally. Your group will look different, but your ideal aim, put it into writing. But before we talk tactics, we need to be aware of the nature of what creates friendship. So C.S. Lewis gave this amazing definition. He said, friendship arises out of mere companionship when 2 or more of the companions discover that they have in common some insight or interest or even taste, which the others do not share, and which, till that moment, each believed to be his own unique treasure or burden. The typical expression of opening friendship would be something like, "What? You too? I thought I was the only one." It is then that a friendship is born, and instantly they stand together in an immense solitude. In C.S. Lewis's day, the best place to find the unicorns who thought like him was to live and teach at Oxford. Oxford was a giant C.S. Lewis friendship filter for the whole country of England and the entire English-speaking world. He never would have found an entire group of people like the Inklings if he lived in a small town, like say in rural Ireland. But today, we have a more profound filter than the Oxford entrance exam in the form of social media. Its algorithms are bent towards helping you discover one another, no matter where you live. How? Well, let me go through these steps. So step 1, discovery. Find the platform and the topics that create what Lewis calls those "what? You too" moments. Step 2, Insightful posts. Share and post the kind of content that resonates uniquely with that tribe of people. Do this regularly and get as many of these unicorns into your orbit as you can. Be sure to interact with them, those who are really leaning in, both in the comments and through the direct messages. Step 3, connect outside of the major platforms. Okay, here's where we need to pause and talk about a strategy that goes beyond social media using new technologies like Zoom. I know we all got a little burned out on Zoom through the pandemic, but having a group conversation about unique topics with people from anywhere in the world is amazing, and you're crazy to not make these connections. This step can be accomplished in many ways. Discovery calls, send a Calendly link through DM for a 30-minute conversation with somebody you want to meet with. Podcast interviews, having a podcast strictly as an excuse to have reasons to connect with your tribe is a killer strategy. Club call, it can be a book club that you meet on Zoom or any other group where you can sign up 3 to 6 1-hour group Zoom calls and connect with those from your tribe. New technology. There are a whole host of off social media platforms growing to make this step seamless, including things like Discord and Volley, Facebook groups, Clubhouse, WhatsApp, hundreds more. They're all being invented all the time. Okay. So you do something to kind of stir up, kind of create that connection, that off social media, kind of more personal interaction. And the 4th step is the meetup. Now that you're cultivating these relationships online through calls, design a repeating rhythm where you can get together in person, rent an Airbnb and bring the group together, promote the meeting on social media so all the FOMO builds up and more people join over time. Constantly improve your strategies for each of these 4 steps. And in a few years, you'll find yourself surrounded by a growing group of amazing new friends. P.S. There are many ways to monetize this process as well, which is perfectly fair, given the fact that you were doing all the hard work of building the tribe and getting everyone together, which we can discuss more in the podcast that I had with Mark today.
So here we are.
Here we are discussing. So what? Yeah, like so. These are still, I think, a little bit top kind of brain like thoughts that I'm working through, almost like something I've experienced, but and am experiencing that I'm trying to understand more deeply. So yeah, tell me, Mark, what are the things that stood out to you there?
I think that if somebody said, wow, Jeremy's has this guy, Mark Parrett, on social media and he does Abraham's wallet, and then they went and looked at our social media, they would go, well, Jeremy really must not have a good network here, because the Abraham's wallet social media, I think it's doubled in the past couple months, but we still have about 400 followers on our biggest platforms. But one thing that's interesting about the way I've seen social media kind of play into the growth, whether it's of our podcasts or just personally creating connections, is that I have not yet. We're actually hiring somebody to fix that reach issue and make the umbrella really big, but I haven't figured that out personally. But what I think I have figured out is how to take a small group and then turn them into actual human connections.
Yes.
I spent time on Sunday with a guy that I think you've connected with on social media, at least, who's a pastor here in Utah, Brian Sauvé. And he just has a strategy of being really aggressive on Twitter and poking all the bears. But he said something once about, hey, we're building something in Ogden, Utah that's going to be integrating business and family and trying to create a community. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. And I saw that on Twitter. But then within a week, we were having Chick-fil-A in his office and just saying, well, we live within 50 miles of each other. We should know each other. I live in a place that lends itself to that because there's not a whole lot of Christians in the state of Utah. So that was kind of an example, I think, of just how my personal social media involvement. I think what you said about looking for kind of that you too thing, that I will tend to segment out how I engage on social media. So I've got my work stuff, and there's people that have been deeply helpful to me in my work. I own a financial planning business, and I would never take their advice on how to run my family, but man, they've helped me dramatically on how we build investment portfolios and things like that. And there's so many voices out there on stuff like that the thing I've noticed as I've looked at those connections is they didn't hook me in, and that relationship didn't start because they posted some brilliant chart on financial advising. Because
Mm.
the accounts that do that are just, they're huge, and
Yeah.
I don't like speaking to any social media thing that's not going to speak back to me.
Yeah.
What I noticed is I could find my people because somebody posted a video of them lifting weights, and
Mm.
I'm really into lifting weights, and I thought, oh, this is a financial advisor that's really into lifting weights, and they also post good content over here.
Mm.
And so, kind of to your point, finding your tribe within the big tribe, it doesn't have to be, um, I'm interested in entrepreneurship. Well, there's a lot of accounts out there that are talking about entrepreneurship, but are there any that talk about entrepreneurship, but also you have a connection with? Because
Yeah.
that we share a hobby. We like to go, we like to both ski, and I live in Utah. Maybe you could come out and ski with me someday.
Yes.
That creates just this incredible crack for you to kind of shove the door open and say, I'd like to either just have a relationship in real life, or at least gain from some of your wisdom
Mm.
virtually.
Yeah. Yeah. This is for the first time really made sense to me about those kind of personal posts. I used to think, oh, maybe you should just like be pumping out ideas almost like a brand would, you know. But if your goal is to actually make connections with people, I like what you're describing. Basically, what really kind of incites maybe that friendship trigger is when there's two things in common that are kind of not usually paired. So something that you really care about, like financial planning, all of a sudden gets paired with a hobby, and you're like, oh, I gotta meet this person in person, you know?
Totally.
Are you following us on Facebook and Instagram yet? Look up @FamilyTeams to get even more free content and never miss out on event announcements.
Another corner of the socials that I inhabit is I guess you'd call it like contentious theological debates that happen amongst
Yes.
brothers. Like,
Yeah.
not people who are actually hateful towards each
Right.
other, but I do like to hear what people are saying. And I've noticed that if there's somebody who has a very different opinion than me on something, but we've connected over sharing recipes on how to cook a good brisket, then
Yes.
it just engenders more goodwill, and
Yes.
there's a common, oh, this person is not just here looking to
Mm.
dunk on me,
Like that
which is
caricature. Yeah. There's a
right.
tendency to, especially when there's a contentious issue that they're constantly pumping out. If they don't throw something else out that's more personal, you're gonna turn them into a cartoon character, or they're gonna turn you into a cartoon character. And
Right.
the occasional like insights into their private life or their personal hobbies allows them to become a real person all of a sudden.
Right.
Hmm.
So that's my top of funnel sort of personal
Okay.
idea is to, and I think it works. I mean, I was reading an article this week about podcasting, and the percentage of people that their favorite part of the podcast is the banter at the beginning,
Yes.
when we just get some personal details, and then there's other people who hate that and they skip it every time.
Right.
Um, but I think it does something. Um,
Mm.
Once you get through that top of funnel stuff, that's where we've really had a lot of success with some of the stuff you mentioned, kind of in the new technology space.
Mm.
So Volley is a startup based here in Utah, but it's an asynchronous video platform. So instead of having to schedule a Zoom call with you, I could record a 30-second or a 20-minute video, and we could go back and forth there. At Abraham's Wallet, we've used that to create a little community
Mm.
of people. And it's been really cool because it started out as a one way. We were just putting a podcast out. Then we created that community. It's not huge. We don't let anybody in. It's people who are kind of supporters of the podcast. So they have some skin in the game, if you will. And then we've turned up in a city randomly. We were in Dallas this summer, and we had about 24 hours notice, and said, does anybody want to get together? And our volley group organized by themselves this
Mm.
incredible evening where we played pickleball and had dinner and had drinks and hung out, and people came together, I think age 18 through 65, swapped phone numbers, and some of those guys are still meeting with each other and spending time together. And so it's really that evolution of the big funnel down to a small online group and then in person. And that's when you speak about starting with the goal in mind, that's always my goal, is that at some
Yes.
point we would be in person. And I love what you said about sitting around a campfire with the guys that are building similar kind of kingdom outposts. That's what uh, I think about and want in my work and my personal life as well. So that's always where I'm angling.
Yeah, and that's a very new thought to me. I think this is why I really wanted to write about it, because what you guys experience at Chicken and Pickle, or what we experience in the mountains, in Denver or Colorado, I feel like is something that a lot of people don't realize, and that social media can lead to in person. And if you care about that, and if that is the end, there's a particular way that you need to get there. And I think that the third step, the fourth is like, you can think about, okay, I'm going to be active on social media, sort of sharing a few things about my life and what I care about. I'm going to potentially, gather some of those people through posting, something that's going to, be red meat to that particular audience. But then the third and fourth step, I think, are the ones that are newer to me, using some kind of technology to get people offline. One of the things that's interesting about Volley is, I think, because it's a video platform, even though people on there might be very directly asking questions or making comments, because it's video, it's already sort of personal. Like, I'm looking at your face. I'm
Right.
The medium is the message, and so there's something different about that versus maybe like a WhatsApp group or something. And so Volley has its own unique way of creating that personal connection in step three. Step three, we're saying, is really, you're getting them off the social media into some other technology that is designed as a medium for that personal interchange, whether that's a Zoom call, or if you want to do it asynchronous, you can use Volley. But something that allows that connection to be there. And that kind of pierces this barrier where all of a sudden it doesn't feel so weird when you turn up in a city and say, who wants to show up? Let's hang out. Let's get a fire and let's talk, or let's go to this restaurant and hang out. They already feel like they kind of know you and that you're kind of already friends. But whatever happens then in that in-person interaction, especially if you start to do it rhythmically, is you're going to develop deep relationships with those unicorns, those people, those like I said, that's why I do the Inklings, is that I used to think that what Tolkien and Lewis and all those guys got to experience at Oxford was somehow like an accident of, the kind of personalities that Lewis and Tolkien had. I really underestimated the fact that it really wasn't that. I really think that Oxford was the X factor. Like, they were in a very strange bubble, right? Extremely, extremely unusual kind of place on the planet, and physically, sort of rooted there for so many years that it allows for this. But most of us, we're not going to find our tribe that ease that with that amount of ease, maybe in our neighborhood or in our city. And we should always try to develop some friendships there. But man, people like men our age, are really lonely and need to have a way of making deep friendships. And so I think that to know that this is available and very possible is really, I think, helpful for guys.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's also a little bit, I like communities, whether they're online or in the flesh, where you've probably read about the research. You can't, well, what's the size of the network that you can have as a person before you start?
Oh, the Dunbar number, 150 is usually, yeah.
Right. And so you can't have, if you have 2,000 social media friends, they're not all your friends, but I think Mark Douglas, who's down in College Station, Texas, and running his own experiment called the Viceroy Project. And they have used Basecamp, the project management software, to create a little private online community. And I don't know all the people on there, but I have 5 or 6 really close relationships with guys that are in that group. And what I do know is that if I had a deep need, or if I was to show up in a town where a bunch of those guys live, just the fact that I'm in there and networked with those people, we have an immediate sort of trust level that would not exist if we all just sort of followed the Viceroy Project and that content
Yes.
project online. So that's where I think networks are also pretty powerful,
Yeah.
especially if they have some teeth, where there's a level of kind of expectation that if you're a part of this, we want you to be doing at least a minimum level of either contribution or there's some qualification. I think about the group you and I are in,
Yeah.
where you're expected to own and build and grow both a business and a family.
Yeah.
And I've even seen people in that group come in and not have either of those things underway and progress to have both of those things underway in short order.
Yeah.
But kind of the network effect of groups is really powerful. It's even living in a place like Utah. I think about that with when I first moved here, you'd run into somebody in the store, meet them, you find out they were a Christ follower, and within 3 days you were having dinner together because it was so uncommon. That has changed a bit as the state has grown, but those networks can be really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. There's really like you have your social media connections, then you have to steward your network really well. And that means using some kind of technology, having that kind of bar, which I think is really healthy. Like you're describing, I think that's a really great insight that I think the bar from social media follower into the network needs to be high enough and clear enough so that it sort of creates that filter, right? When C.S. Lewis and Tolkien and Owen Barfield and these guys were sitting around, smoking their pipes and chatting every Thursday evening, that the bar was really high, and so they all had to, they were expected to read what they were writing, to this group and really, make it available for their criticism. So people with so there's the music clubs and there's writing groups and there's, but what is it that you really care about? Like this is really kind of a public service announcement to you guys and saying, if you care about something, I don't care if it's cooking or like take 2 or 3 things and say the Venn diagram is like, guys, like my Venn diagram, like, Mark is saying is I get really excited about guys who are really passionate about following Jesus, really passionate about building their families and are, really going for some business. And so they care about creating a multi-generational legacy that integrates those 3 things. Their faith, their family, and their business. I just want to hang out with those guys, and my access to those kind of guys, which used to be like on a trickle, is growing rapidly, and I'm being so blessed by this because these steps exist, and we have ways of getting people through kind of through that filter into a real interpersonal conversation, and then when you make it rhythmic, we get together twice a year with that group. I mean, after we were 3 years into this thing, I mean, that's amazing. I always project now, what does this look like 5-10 years from now? It's going to be amazing. So I just want people to be aware, guys, you can do this. This is something that you should really think about.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's been eye-opening to see how some of those relationships have developed over time, and it didn't take living all on the same block and having kind of thick community, although I think that's great.
Yeah.
We were able to develop real friendships that started out as really Zoom calls for
Right.
the first few months, and then ended up as, I don't know, on the last trip that we spent in the mountains, several families stopped at my house on their way out to the mountains and spent the night. So it's grown to not just me, but my whole family. And I think that's definitely a success story.
Very much. Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Mark, for talking to me. And I hope for you guys who are hearing this sparks some ideas. Please do those basic steps, decide what you're doing, aim at something, and design a process that makes that aim likely to happen. And I think this is one of the coolest ways to use social media. So I'm excited to keep watching, Mark, what you guys are doing and participate in those things. And I'm excited to hear anybody else. Please let me know if you start to create a friendship filter, and let me see what it looks like.
And if you want to talk about contentious theological topics, weightlifting,
Yes.
or financial planning, you know where to find me on Twitter.
That's right. That's Mark's Venn diagram. Get in there, guys. Awesome. Thanks so much, Mark.
Thank you for listening to Jeremy Pryor's podcast. Make sure you hit that follow button so you don't miss out on any future content. Follow Jeremy on Twitter and Instagram, as well as his Substack blog, all linked in the description. See you next time.